Hi, I'm John Gregg. Glad you could join us today. We're going to have an absolutely great time. Going to tell some stories, going to listen to some really fantastic Hoosier music, and we're going to hear from a rock and roll expert. All here on the porch. Well, neighbor Tom, you're back for the afternoon.
That's right, it was hot. I needed a glass of iced tea and maybe one of your stories.
Well, you know how you have to twist my arm and tell a story. You know, this one isn't necessarily funny, but it's just my part with what I feel is history. And it's kind of connected to a guy who I'm hoping drops by today. Back in 1964, I turned 10 on September 6th. My mother had bought a special gift for me. Now you got to go back to February of 1964 or January, and these four guys from England called the Beatles had appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show. I mean, I just think this is the greatest thing since Schwinn bicycles, you know. And Mother buys a ticket for me, her, Dad, my brother James. My baby brother wasn't born at the time. And they were $3 a piece, which was a lot of money then. I mean, that was $12, and I imagine Dad probably only made like $1.65 or $2 an hour. It was my 10th birthday, and I was even getting out of school for the day. And we drive to Indianapolis to go to the State Fair. Now, I'd been to the State Fair before. We were going to see this afternoon concert of the Beatles. And we drive up there, and here to tell you how different it was. Dad would have been 33, and Mom would have been 32 or thereabouts. And Dad had on a sport coat, a white short-sleeve dress shirt, and dress slacks. We were going to a concert, and Dad's age, you know, they dressed up for something like that. Of course, he had on a hat, and Mom was dressed up, had on earrings. And we go up there, we park the car, and we get inside the Coliseum. It's packed, and I'm not going to tell you we had the best seats in the house, but I was there. And it was filled with a lot of young people, but there were a lot of young pre-teenagers like me there with their parents. And I mean, it was just noisy as could be, and all of that, all of a sudden, you know, I don't remember if lights got dark or anything like that. It wasn't anything like it is today at a concert. But all of a sudden, a local disc jockey walked out, and if I was thinking, I could tell you his name, and he came out, and of course the place started ramping up in volume. And he made some comment about Frank Sinatra was a phenomenon. And he had lived through Elvis Presley, and that was even a bigger one. But this thing and when he said the Beatles, the place erupted. He said, but this with the Beatles, and I only 20 years later, when a guy named Mike McDaniels gave me a tape of it, realized, he said, this phenomenon with the Beatles is like something I've never seen. And he keeps trying to say something, and you've got people just screaming. And all of a sudden, he walks off, and out they come. And I mean, it was just unbelievable to listen to this and experiencing it. And I had no idea at 10 years of age how much fun I was going to have remembering that. And you know what happened? I went to the State Fair to see them in 1964. When I turned 65, my lovely wife Lisa took me to Liverpool. I wanted to go see Paul. Paul didn't want to see me. He wasn't there. But we had a great time in Liverpool. We went to the Cavern Club, got in there at like 8 in the morning, and they've got a couple cover bands playing Beatles songs.
Sure.
So I walk up to this bartender who wanted to know if I wanted a Guinness, and not at 8 in the morning. And I said, what time did the band start? Well, the band never stops. There's 24/7 Beatle music in the Cavern Clubs in Liverpool. Really? And let me tell you, if you ever get the chance to go to Liverpool, it's worth the trip. Well, Dr. Glenn Gass, the Indiana University Dr. Rock, Jacobs School of Music, and we're going to talk about the Beatles. I'm throwing all that out there because I want to get down to it.
Good.
I thank you so much
for
coming. Well,
thank you for letting me come and talk about the Beatles.
Well, it just made my day.
As
I mentioned earlier, you know, I saw them live. I've seen Paul a number of times. I want you to tell me why they were successful. What, sometimes timing's everything. 1964, was it the year, was it the group, what was it?
Well, like everything, it's hard to put your finger on. Shorthand answer is rock and roll was in kind of rock and roll was dead. That's the cliche. Early 60s pop, girl groups, teen idols. The generation that grew up on rock and roll, the baby boomers, that loved Elvis, that loved Little Richard, that loved Chuck Berry, that Bob Dylan, people like that were exactly the Beatles age, that grew up and loved that music and learned it. And then all of a sudden it was gone. Elvis was in the army, Little Richard's in Bible school, Chuck Berry's in jail, Eddie Cochran's dead, Buddy Holly's dead. It's like, it's all gone. And the music industry just swept in and took control again and marketed its teen idols and marketed its, commercially written songs and produced songs and took control again, because rock and roll was like a renegade, an outlaw music, done little Sam Phillips, little studios scattered around towns, and the songs weren't written by the Brill Building people or the Tin Pan Alley people. So, we were primed for something, although we didn't know it. And then the other thing that people always mention, and it's true, is that John F. Kennedy was assassinated in November, end of November, 22nd, 1963. And I Want to Hold Your Hand came out in January 1964. So November, December, it's not even 2 months since we've gone through the worst jolt of anyone our age. And certainly the young people like us were like dumbstruck, because Kennedy was like everything good about our country. He had kids younger than us, in the White House.
Absolutely.
And it seemed, I remember that Christmas, my mom saying, or me saying, are we going caroling? I said, not this year. Well, where are the lights? Not this year. It wouldn't be right. Nothing felt right. Then the Beatles came with such force, like this tidal wave, and it was okay to laugh again and scream and let loose. I got to think that the reaction was even stronger than it would have been, because all those kids were so
pent up
and distraught. They were suddenly able to just let it loose, and suddenly it was okay to be young and have fun and laugh. And they're British, so it's not even sacrilegious. You're not screaming for the Beach Boys or something in America. That wouldn't seem right. So it's like everything.
And the long hair.
And the long hair,
which wasn't much longer than yours.
This is too short. I should have grown it up. But yeah, everything about them. And England might as well have been Mars back then, because the world was so big, and their accents and everything just seemed new. It's like, all right, now the 60s are in motion. It was the Kennedy and then the Beatles, and now bang, the baby boom's on. Or the Beatle boom.
The Beatle boom.
But really, we were the Beatle boomers.
I remember the Beatle boom, and I can remember saving up money and going to Linton, Indiana, and buying the Beatles album when it came out, on the big 33 album. And were they played much on the radio before Ed Sullivan? Because if they were, I don't remember that, and that could be a factor of me just being 10.
Well, I Want to Hold Your Hand came out in January. So the pump was primed.
Okay.
I'll tell you how well the pump was primed. I'm from Greencastle, Indiana. And I went down to the Commercial Hotel and bought this button before the Ed Sullivan Show.
Really?
I mean, somebody was really doing their marketing publicity job. And it's kind of a long story, but other labels had gotten the rights to earlier Beatles songs, Please Please Me, She Loves You, that Capitol Records had rejected. And of course, they immediately, when I Want to Hold Your Hand hit, re-released theirs. So there was like this mini flood of Beatles songs even before the Ed Sullivan Show. That's why, we all knew the Ed Sullivan Show was coming up. It wasn't like we were all caught by surprise, oh my God, what's this? It's like everyone's waiting.
I do remember waiting for it and being told by older kids, we needed to watch that. We talked about them at the Indiana State Fair. When I was speaker, the state archivist showed me the contract that was signed, and you've probably seen copies of it, where they got $80-some thousand, which I kind of did the math, of almost $1 million today for their 2 shows. And they said they'd like to have some ice cold Coca-Cola and some clean hand towels. And today the stars want everything, but they were pretty simple guys then.
I think they wanted Marlboro cigarettes too.
Did they?
If anyone saw that Get Back documentary, they smoked relentlessly. It's such a, my sons were sort of shocked by that.
I have another question that's all Indiana. I always heard, and this could be one of these myths, that Charlie O. Finley, he owned the Oakland Athletics, that he hired them to play at his daughter's birthday party up in LaPorte and Michigan City when they had done their Chicago show. Did they ever do anything like that, or do you know?
No, he desperately tried to get them, not just for that, but for a concert. And Brian Epstein was really good. Their manager said, you know, we have the schedule. I'm not going to beat the boys up.
Okay.
And he didn't bow down even to big money.
Wow.
Just like the Beatles in the 70s never got back together for $1 million. You know.
Well, hold that, and we want to talk to you right here on the porch. When the Beatles were at the State Fair, they originally were going to do one show, and why'd they end up doing two? Any idea?
It's just so much momentum had built up. It was clearly, they were trying to think, what's the biggest place we can fill? And, you know, the State Coliseum, and then that filled immediately at the grandstand. This is all headed toward Shea Stadium, It's insane. Not now with Lollapalooza and all that stuff, but, back then to think of a pop group filling huge venues like that. And Ed Sullivan was February, and then all those albums got released and all those singles, because they'd been popular in England for a year, so that all floods us. And after we're done sifting through that, A Hard Day's Night comes out. We go see the movie about 20 times, and you start getting your sense of who your favorite Beatle is and what the different personalities are like, which only made you love the whole group more.
Absolutely.
It was just magic. And then it's like, oh my God, they're coming to America. And then it's like for Hoosiers, they're coming to Indianapolis.
And I know they went to Florida. There's something pretty unique about one of their Florida stories. And for our younger people joining us here on the porch, we still had segregation in the United States. They need to know that we were not, if we think things are bad today, they were worse even then. So what was the deal with Florida?
Well, it was the Orange Bowl, and it was going to be a segregated audience. And the Beatles got wind of this and said, we're not going on if it's segregated. And this, the Jim Crow South is, well, this isn't done. But the power of the Beatles and the money they were going to generate, the producers just had to capitulate. And then the next year they had that in their contract. We will not play segregated audiences. They were appalled by the segregation in America. I mean, John Lennon especially used to read and quiz reporters and say, how can you treat people? Everyone that made every song we love is a Black American. And we get over here and we find out that you guys don't even respect them, or much less, know who Chuck Berry is. They were amazed at our amnesia. Wow. So, no, I mean, they really, they were the first wave of the counterculture, and they were our leaders, even when we didn't know it yet.
Tell me, you mentioned Hard Day's Night. What's your favorite Beatles movie?
Hard Day's Night.
Hard Day's Night. It is good.
So joyous.
It is good.
Yeah.
Now, this is unfair to ask you, but you mentioned everybody kind of had a favorite. Do you have a favorite? Or do you not?
Oh, I can answer that pretty easily. I'm still wearing round glasses 50-some
John
years
Lennon.
later.
Oh my!
I'm
sorry for not picking up.
No,
on
that's okay. And I'm a John guy. And the thing is, what was hard for me to get my later students, not the first ones, they had already divided up into the rival. You could tell what someone was like by just saying who their favorite Beatle was. And in the last few years, it became, well, Paul, Paul, he's still out there. He's Paul, of course he's great. I love Paul McCartney. Who's better than Paul McCartney? Nobody. But John was a hero. He wasn't just a pop star or a songwriter. He was a hero to us. And to say John, it meant something, at least to me, and I think a lot of people, maybe mainly boys, I don't know, but it was like that. He was, if you said, who's your favorite Beatle? Paul McCartney. It's almost ridiculous. It's like, yeah, hey, great songs.
Yeah.
But you say John Lennon, it meant the guy that put his neck on the line to do Give Peace a Chance and to give power to the peace movement and to really get out there and take the mantle from Bob Dylan and
he was controversial. Every time he opened his mouth, it was almost controversial.
And it breaks my heart that students now think of John, a lot of them, as the weirdo Beatle with, the way out Yoko Ono and the drugs and the beard and all the nude album covers. And they remember all that stuff. They don't remember, this guy wrote, some of your favorite, A Day in the Life, Strawberry Fields Forever, Come Together, Help, on and on. So the tables have turned. It used to be almost all John, and now it's, and then George kind of came from nowhere.
Now, have you been to Liverpool?
I have, many times. I did a summer course in London and Liverpool with Indiana University students. And
as you can guess, when I was at IU, they didn't take you to places like that. But go ahead.
no, they didn't.
So, tell me your impression. Tell me something cool about Liverpool that really fascinated you or grabbed you.
For me, I went there alone first to scout out, so I could do the walking tours with the students without having to look at a map. And I got off the train at Lime Street, and the first thing that struck me was everybody sounded like a Beatle. I mean, it's like everyone, the cashier would sound like Ringo, and the cab driver would sound like George. I'm like, wow. And then you go to a pub, and perfect strangers would be bantering and yelling and making sarcastic comments, and that great Liverpool, sardonic wit was that group humor that was A Hard Day's Night and was the Beatles. That was a Liverpool thing. And Ray Davies of the Kinks said, as long as the Beatles stay from Liverpool, they'll be okay, because you can't grow up there and be pretentious. So I mean, it gave me a sense that the Beatles actually came from somewhere.
Yeah,
they weren't
and they were plain old people.
Right.
You mentioned that they came from somewhere. 58 years ago, this phenomena hit. Where will it be in the next 58 years?
I think, where's Beethoven? I mean, he still gets heard now and then. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think you had to be alive in 1800 to love Beethoven. You didn't have to be alive in the 60s to love the Beatles or Dylan or the Stones. I mean, it helped. It was nice. We were lucky. We didn't know how lucky we were.
Lucky.
It turns out not every generation's guaranteed great art. In fact, it's pretty rare, especially, with all these different forces. So I don't see, I think the best of it will last. The best of any kind of art lasts. And I think the Beatles have kind of proven after more than 50 years now that they may have been the best.
Well, I have one last little just question for you. Favorite song and why?
Oh, you have to say the hardest. It depends. Okay, I'll give you the easy answer because it's the true one in my life.
Okay.
It seems a little too obvious, but there are places I'll remember all my life. Some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone, some remain. All those places have their moments with lovers and friends I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living in my life. I've loved them all. I mean, I played that at my parents' funerals. I played that at my wife and I, when we got married, we played that. I had it on each of my son's birth tapes. I made different tapes for their birth, but I had that song on both because it had to be. And I've made students cry, and this is honest to God truth, at final exams, playing that at the end of the semester after the final. They're walking out crying. So that's something for a 25-year-old kid.
That's beautiful. I'll tell you, we're going to have you back sometime, Glenn. So I hope you get back and take that long and winding road, so to speak, from Bloomington to Sanborn, and stay around. We're going to have a little Hoosier music here on the porch. Maya Michelson, Indiana Arts Commission. How are you?
I'm good, John. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to hear that testimony. Who is this gentleman that's joined us on the porch?
I am delighted to introduce to you Nathan Dillon. Nathan is a Bloomington musician, songwriter, but most importantly, he's an instructor. And Nathan has claimed to me that he can teach anybody how to play the guitar. So, what do you think, Nathan?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's see what we can do. All right, John, you're about to have your very first guitar lesson here on the porch.
Very first.
Here you go. Got it?
Now, how do you wear this thing?
You got it right already.
Really?
You're a natural.
Just kind of feels like a weed eater.
Well, it does have string.
Okay.
Oh,
that's good. That's good. I wish my belly was a little bigger. Turn it out this way. Okay.
All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to play two chords, all right?
Okay.
Chords are when we're playing a whole bunch of strings at once. Exactly. So take your middle two fingers, put your ring finger on the last string, the biggest string closest to you. Right.
Oh, my ring finger.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
I see. Okay.
Right, I'm going to help you. There you go.
Okay.
And then your middle finger goes on the next string down, right there.
Right there.
Right there.
That's
on
already
that
hard.
string.
Okay.
There you go.
Like
Now,
that?
let's go ahead and play a little bit. Yeah. Now that's your G chord. Your G chord, and I've got it written down here. Every time you see a G over a word, that's where you're going to play that G.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
And then the C chord is very similar. The C chord, we're going to play a C major 7, but we're going to call it a C. You just take your 2 fingers and you move them down 1 string towards the floor. Well, John, you're a natural. Let's play a song that I wrote for the show. How about it?
Okay.
Here we go. You got a story, I'd like to hear it. Morning glories, boats on the river. Sit a spell and sing a tune to yourself. I'll join you on the porch, on the porch. Means everything to come back home, spinning weather vane and cup of joe. Wave hello from across the street. We're all friends when we meet on the porch.
On the porch.
There it is again. On the porch.
On the porch. This ends my career. I think when we come back, we'll give it to the real musician. On the porch. Well, Nathan, thanks for making me a jukebox hero. I really appreciate that. What are you going to play for us now?
This is a song I wrote for my wife called Stumbling in Love.
Please.
All right. Falling upstairs and singing love songs, hobbled by streets of cobblestone, hidden through the outdoor over and over again. Stumbling in love, please take my hand. Stumble in love, stumble in love. 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 Head in the clouds up above. Reel me in like a kite on a string. I'm so glad you can love a fool. Look at the state I'm in. Stumble in love, stumble in love. 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 Leaving early, left a note on the mirror. Caught a glimpse of my goofy grin. I'm so glad you can love a fool. Look at the state I'm in. Stumble in love, stumble in love. Stumble in love, stumble in love. I'm so glad you can love a fool. I'm a fool stumbling in love.
Nathan, thank you so much. I really enjoyed your music. Thanks for trying to teach me how to play. Glenn, thank you so much. Loved hearing all about the Beatles. We're going to have to keep in touch. Maya and the Indiana Arts Commission, thank you so much. So I want to remind everyone that, life's pretty tough and it can grind you down. We live in an imperfect world. So this next week, if you see somebody you can tell is having a tough time, give them a smile, maybe the only one they get. What about let's hear an On the Porch, On the Porch.
Sounds good. Here we go. You got a story you'd like to tell. I'd like to hear it. Morning glories, boats on the river. Sit a spell and sing a tune to yourself. I'll join you on the porch, on the porch. Means everything to come back home, spinning weather vane, a cup of joe, wave hello from across the street. We're all friends when we meet on the porch, on the porch.